delighted to be able to do this presentation focusing really on you and acknowledging you and the challenges you've been through and continue to live through with this post-pandemic collegiate world we're in. So real quickly, my background is originally a chemical worker, finally went to a community college, ended up getting a master's degree in biopsychology and did some work in a clinical setting, and then got a PhD in educational leadership from the University of Texas, and have been to a number of different colleges, beginning from Miami-Dade to the Midwest, and finally back home to Texas. I'm delighted to be here. Looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 folks, and so what would be helpful for me is if you would just take just a second and let me know which college you're at and what your role is at the college. So someone just take off.
Okay, I can start. My name is Nadia Nazarenko. I'm a Dean of General Education and Academic Support at Alvin Community College.
Thank you. Next.
I'm Timothy Whitkey. I'm a math instructor at Alvin College.
Hey, Timothy.
I'm Karen Killian, and I'm a biology instructor at Glenn College on the Brenham campus.
Welcome. Thank you for taking time to come to this session.
Sure.
Next.
Awesome.
I'm Mara McKenzie, and I'm an instructor at Alvin College in the biology department.
Thanks, Erin.
My name is Jackie Johnston, and I'm a math professor at Northeast Texas Community College.
Welcome from Northeast Texas. Cool.
My name is Sydney Morris, and I'm an adjunct instructor in ACC's English department.
Okay. Welcome. Thank you for attending. Pam, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure, I was typing it into the chat. I'm actually out sick today, but I really wanted to participate if I could today. So Pam Sheffman, I am a Dean and Executive Director for Institutional Effectiveness and Research at Alvin Community College.
Great. You know, that's a good idea because I know we don't have a lot of time. If you guys don't mind just introducing yourself in the chat, but I don't want to cut anybody off. If someone else is just really want to introduce yourself verbally, please go ahead. All right, if not, as you see, the title is Surviving to Thriving in a Post-Pandemic College World. I wanted to start with just kind of an overview of the context for the dialogue, and I hope it is a dialogue we have, and the goal is really provide a time for reflection and exploration of the need for human and social connections when we deal with social isolation and stress. This gives you a kind of a look at the prolonged period of chronic stress we've been under with the pandemic. You go to March 2020 and you follow that across, you get to spring 2022. If my math is right, that's 2 full years. That's a pretty long time to be involved. In 2021, the APA's Stress in America survey said that the pandemic has imposed a regimen of constant risk assessment upon many. Each day brings an onslaught of choices with an ever-changing context as routines are upended and once trivial tasks are recast in the light of pandemic life. I think that accurately describes what we've all lived through, and just a real quick review. The difference between chronic stress and acute. Our body experiences stressors with such frequency or intensity that the autonomic nervous system does not have a chance to activate our relaxation responses on a regular basis. Chronic stress really is what I think we've lived through for 2 years. Since the body remains in a constant state of physiological arousal, it affects virtually every system in the body, either directly or indirectly. And you know, if the biology folks have some input, please feel free to speak up. But it says people were built to handle acute stress, which is short-lived, but not chronic stress, which is steady over a long period of time. And stress is really one of those things that many times we don't even realize what's going on. If you work in the clinical world, a lot of times it's expressed in anxiety. So someone who's very depressed and under a lot of stress is going to have a lot of anxiety. Here's what I thought was interesting. APA did a survey 2021 research. Karen, go ahead.
No, sir, that was a mistake. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
So 1 in 3 Americans, that's 32%, say they struggle to make even basic decisions. But look at the difference by generations, and I think it's pretty common for us to have 2, 3, maybe even 4 different generations in our classrooms. Millennials, 48%, nearly half of them say it's hard to make even a basic decision. Gen Z adults, 37%, Gen Xers, 32%, and boomers and older adults, much less. And then the last one that struck me as very, very poignant is parents. 47% of parents struggle to make basic decisions versus non-parents, about half that amount. And I think we see that in our employees all the time when we're dealing with the issues of, is college open, is the college closed, am I in quarantine, am I not quarantined, have I been exposed or not exposed, do I have my children in childcare or not? And that's one that continues to be tough even when there's not a pandemic. The generational differences, when you say I'm more likely to struggle with basic decisions and generally high stress levels. If you look at the average stress level, 1 being no stress, 10 a great deal. Gen Z adults, 5.6, all the way down to older adults, 2.9. Millennials lead the charge again at 5.7. Do not know how to manage the stress we feel due to the coronavirus pandemic specifically. And those numbers are even higher. So contextually, one more slide. Disruption to education for Gen Z adult college students. 87% say their education is a significant source of stress. 82% say they have uncertainty about 2020-21 school year. And 67% say the pandemic makes planning for their future feel impossible. This is the 2020 survey. And nearly 1 in 5 adults say their mental health is worse this year. And again, by generations, you see a huge difference. And within Gen Z, the teenage portion, 51%, say it's planning for their future is impossible. But the ones who are in college, 2 in 3, say planning for their future feels impossible. So when we're looking at the context and the consequences, this kind of shows across time the APA's survey. Wow, you know, if I'm a Gen Z adult, my stress level went way up. It's now come pretty well back down in 2021. Compared to all adults, though, look at the difference. How many of you, if you just stop and think about the number of Gen Z students in your classroom, experience stress just trying to deal with the Gen Z students and their stress? It can be very difficult. I know from a little bit of watching our grandchildren and our daughter and husband during the height of this pandemic, the stress was absolutely unreal for both the 6 and 9-year-old and for both parents. So we are there every day. The biology is saying that knowing that we are seen and heard by important people in our lives can make us feel calm and safe. Being ignored or dismissed can precipitate rage or mental collapse. But attuning with another person can shift us out of disorganized and fearful states. I'm very curious if any of you have experienced a student that seemed to be experiencing this whole disorganized and fearful state, and they've disrupted your teaching. That's not a rhetorical question. I'm asking someone to answer.
Yeah, I would think I would like to speak. I don't think I have noticed disorganized thoughts or someone that I was worried that they would be angry or lash out. But what I have seen is that people are overwhelmed and that they end up dropping the class. I had a higher drop rate than ever, and it is due to I have to balance life and studies, and life and earning a salary was more important, and it was hurtful.
And if we're in a virtual setting, is it more difficult to connect with your students?
I actually like the virtual better. It was actually easier. They participated more, and but it's the people that think they cannot learn virtually, that need that face-to-face interactions, that had the hardest time.
And that's where trying to come up with some sorts of different ways of connecting is critical. The second part is really about the connectedness, resiliency, and a little bit of affirmation. These are three key terms, and I borrowed this from a presentation from UT MB here in Houston, and the presenter that came out to talk with our cabinet about ways to support our faculty and staff. And human connection, energy exchange between people who pay attention to one another. That human connection, it says, has the power to deepen the moment, inspire change, and build trust. And so I'm curious, anytime I look at a student who is just kind of by themselves all the time now that we're back on campus, and I really wonder, is that student able to survive and thrive without having connections? Because it appears they're not. And I'm thinking of 2 or 3 students I've seen around campus. I go out of my way to say hello and try to connect with them. Social connection is a feeling you belong to a group and generally feel close to other people. One of the things that the latest research says for students, why they want to be back on campus is exactly that, so they can be close to others. And the scientific evidence says that this is a core psychological need, essentially to feeling satisfied with your life. Probably not 100% of people need to feel social connected, but the vast majority of us do. And social isolation, I'm very hopeful this is something that is going to be less common, but it's that state of complete or near complete lack of contact between an individual and society. Differs from loneliness, which is a temporary lack of contact with other humans. So you think about social isolation during the peak of this pandemic. It's far and away the strongest social risk factor out there. And so how did you manage your own social isolation or not when we were all shut down? Laura says, I've found virtual students are many times distracted by the people in their homes because the computer is in a common room. It's hard for them to focus. Amen to that. Did any of you have your own experiences with someone you knew that just really struggled with having to be, quote unquote, quarantined or isolated when everything was shut down? I'll go back when it first started. I was at a college in it looked like Sydney wanted to say something. Sydney?
Oh, I kind of feel like I may have a different perspective. I've actually finished graduate school last year, so the last year of my graduate education was mostly online, so it was really difficult, and I felt like I was kind of missing out in maybe the quality of discussions and engagement I would have been able to have because we had to move online. And I took my final graduate exit exam online, had limited resources, so it was a much different experience than I would have had if, the pandemic hadn't have happened at that time. So yeah, it was very, very stressful.
Well, I think there's something to be said for academic rituals. I mean, that's part of what attracts us to academia. It's those graduation exercises. It's getting a chance to do a presentation in a classroom. It's hanging out in the college area where people like to have a cup of coffee or even an alcoholic brew and just really get to meet and know one another, especially at the graduate school level. So we had some nursing students who graduated in December, and they were a class that had just started in January when the pandemic hit. So they tried to do over half of their program in nursing virtually. And they spoke about the challenge of that, and some of them dropped out and came back just simply because of wanting to be with their others. And I think of the power of a cohort. And if you have nursing programs, and I'm sure most all of us do, the power of those cohorts is amazing. Erin says, I think my oldest had a tough time as being in high school and being around friends is important. When you think about those students like Erin's oldest, coming to us with lost opportunities. That is something that I think trickles into our classrooms today, that they did not get to go through the normal kind of rites of passage of leaving high school. We've always had this need to determine if another person is safe. That's human connection. And if someone's safe, we can connect and use each other to co-regulate, to be able to handle stress better if you have someone with you. One thing stressed me a whole lot when I was in college was organic chemistry. And if it hadn't been for a close friend that I developed named Jimmy, I'm not sure I would have made it through organic chemistry. I was working full-time, rotating shift work, and I did not have the best math background in the world from high school. And so having someone else that could help me deal with that and help explain it to me was critical. I don't know how you do that in a virtual setting as easy as you do it face-to-face. And I like the description of survival of the fittest. The fittest is the one who can make the most connections. And it's not just I'm a friend on Facebook. It's that actual human-to-human connection. I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Brown from University of Houston. She was known as Houston's therapist early on in the midst of the pandemic. And I really like this quote of her: a deep sense of love and belonging is an irresistible need of all people. We are basically biologically, cognitively, physically, and spiritually wired to love, be loved, and belong. When those needs are not met, we don't function as we were meant to. So, do you agree with that? If someone doesn't answer, I'll pick on you. Manuela, you say yes. If you're familiar with Amarillo College, their president is astounding. That his whole approach to life is love. And this is a president who lived on the street for 5 days incognito to see what it was like to experience homelessness, because they struggle with a number of students in their college dealing with poverty issues. So when we're in a situation at our college, right, and we are very cognizant and aware of the issues around risk with sexual harassment or this and that, how do you deal with the need to be loved and to love your students in a way that truly does support one another and is not engaged with the other in a time when you also feel stressed to be careful and keep a distance? That's a complex issue for me when I look at the faculty that care the deepest can also be the faculty that run the risk of being hurt and disappointed when their students don't perform well. But it doesn't stop us from needing to care. Where do you find in your workplace the situation where you do feel comfortable agreeing with the fact that, yes, we need to love and be loved, and we need to belong? Jennifer, say a little bit more from your your comment. It's great. You can't pour out of an empty cup. It's so important to find areas to fill your love cup so you can pour it into your students. Wow, what a great way to say it. Jennifer, say a little more.
You'll have to bear with me. I had to step out, and so if you hear other things going on, that's why. But
hey, that's fine.
That was one of the most important things for me, especially during COVID, and even now when we're in kind of this hybrid situation, that there had to be areas in my life that filled up my own love cup. You know, for me, it was my faith, it was my family, it was the fact that, you know, I ride horses, and that's like my own version of therapy. Wow. There were things that I did to fill up my love cup and help me escape and reset, so that when I did have that student that needed that extra attention, I wasn't already dry. I had something to give, if that makes sense.
I think it makes perfect sense. Someone else, how do you make sure that, in Jennifer's words, your love cup stays full so you can share with others? Lori.
I think the thing that helped me survive the most as far as refilling my cup was focusing on my faith, as well as staying in touch with family and close friends, because that kept me from being absorbed into the microcosm that was virtual education during the quarantine.
Say a little bit more about being absorbed into the microcosm. That's a wonderful term.
Well, normally we leave home and go to work, and it is easy to, or well, it's easier to leave your work at work and go back to your home. But when you're working in your home, you just are there all the time and feel like, oh, I didn't finish that. I need to step over here and finish it. And before you know, 3 hours of your time is gone, and you haven't had time to relax or rejuvenate or even take care of your normal basic needs.
So very true. My daughter is a public relations specialist and a great graphic designer, and I watched her get caught up in the office overlooking the den area of their house hour after hour. I'm going to stop by 5, and it'll be 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, and the boys are wondering where she's at, and she's tired. And you're right, there's no stopping point. The other thing I'm going to ask, sometimes when things are chaotic and crazy, say after a major storm, and people are trying to find a place of normalcy, coming to the college is more of a normalcy. Going to work, you feel in a place where it's normal again. How do you get out of that mode of, wow, I'm not connected? Are all of you back on campus full time? Pretty much, I say yes. It's kind of a hybrid model for us. Yeah, not full time. So that kind of leads into this whole thing. If we need to be connected, and we're not connected and we're not being filled up, who takes care of you? When you're on campus, I bet there have been times when a colleague has noticed something was wrong and just said, let's go get a cup of coffee, or hey, how you doing? And seriously sit down and visit it. So who takes care of you and your colleagues? How do you reach out to each other when the classrooms are virtual? Lots of online classes still, so far, still back on campus. Yes, not quite full time. I'm looking down. Yes, Erin.
We have a real supportive group over here in the science department. And so I think that it's helped a lot that we all, even during the pandemic, I mean, we met in teams, we text each other. So we spend a lot of time communicating all throughout the pandemic as well as now. So again, we just have a really supportive group here, group texting and so forth. And so that's been very helpful.
Any other examples? Because that's a good one. Julie says you have to reach out more yourself. Sydney says the sense of community at ACC is so beneficial. My coworkers and I speak frequently about how we're doing, what we're working on, and how we're handling our stress. Check-ins at the start of team meetings. I like that one. I've been very cognizant of our cabinet members and the stress they're under, and at times I feel kind of hopeless to do anything for them. No matter how hard I try, the stress is still there, and dealing with family issues and life issues that are just normal. So for me to be refilled, it really takes a lot of reading time. I just enjoy reading. So that's one way that refills me, is just kind of reading. Lori says, have to realize it's okay to have a conversation about non-work things. Oh, boy, how important. Karen, were you going to say something?
I was going to say that TCCTA started master teacher meetups. just as the pandemic, well, in April after we all shut down. And there's several of us on this call and in this conference, and that's where I met Leanne Moore, who's from ACC, and those master teacher meetups, we call them all different kinds of things, all kinds of therapy things and everything else, but they have just been awesome to be able to share with people from other institutions and know that everybody is having the same issues and that we can talk and we can support each other, and it's just been fabulous. We love it.
Thank you. I want to go back to Lori's comment. Realize it's okay to have non-work related conversations. Are we feeling a pressure from our presidents and our administrations? We got to be more productive. We don't have enough enrollment. We've got to recruit more. And sometimes is that give an impression you shouldn't even be focused on being a friend or a support? I'm asking you to kind of take an examination of us as administrative leaders and what are we doing to make it safe to have those conversations. Lori.
I was going to say that I felt more supported to take care of myself from my dean, who has asked me, are you doing what you need to do? Are you resting? And that sort of thing. And that has just been a very positive thing that has occurred, especially since I joined the faculty in January. That she's reminded me, you're teaching a night class, don't wear yourself out, remember to take a nap, that sort of thing. And I've appreciated that.
Thank you. I think Julie has a comment.
I think it's something that I did to myself during the pandemic when we were working from home. I knew that there were a lot of distractions around me, so I would force myself to stay on topic and I would force myself to try to stay on task. Whereas when on campus, I can feel like I can take that brain break and walk around and say hi to somebody and check in on somebody. It just feels more natural that way. So it's something that I did to myself. I don't think it was pressure from anybody else, but for myself.
Well, we know without a doubt that our enrollments in the pandemic have gone down, and that does create stress in the whole institution. But I'm confident we're going to come through it and come out the other side just fine. We're building a new baseline this year to see what it is. And I'm worried, to be honest with you, about the delayed learning effect that's going on for our students of the future. And how are we going to help them catch up? Lori and then Julie.
Dr. Exley, it's really encouraging for me to hear you as the leader of the institution say that we're building a new baseline, because that tells me that you understand we may not get back to pre-COVID, or we may have to make some changes to get back to pre-COVID or pre-Harvey, because this institution has been hit really hard in the last 10 years.
I'm just amazed at the resilience already. And thank you for those kind comments, because we do have to look at it as you just can't compare this year to previous years, especially pre-COVID. Julie, I think you were going to say something?
No, sir.
Okay. I do want to encourage you to thank those folks that support you. Want to talk a little bit about resilience, and defined by our ability to withstand, bounce back, and grow despite downturns. I'm probably the only one that's had downturns in the last probably 50 years of my life. Not true. We all go through them. I think psychological resilience, according to Dr. Sood, is it can be learned. It's people who report higher resilience are physically healthier, more productive, happier, and have closer relationships. His research says if you're 5% more resilient, you have a 10 to 15% lower risk of a mental health diagnosis. So for those of you who have been engaged in any form or fashion in healthcare or the clinical world, or you just look around our students, the conversation is really loud, and I think it's beyond just students, it's all of us. Mental health issues are more prominent today. The need for wraparound services are more critical than ever before. Texas is better than other states I've been in, but still it is a challenge for us to find mental health support services for our students. And that's a very, very stressful thing. Coming from the clinical background for 4 years, I was always feeling like there are problems for this individual or this family that's larger than I can figure out how to help them. And that gave me a sense of, oh, I'm not sure if I'm successful. Dealing with students in the classroom who are dealing with stress and mental health issues, if you're a faculty member and that's not where you have the most training and skills is dealing with that, how well does the institution support you in helping you help students? Lori?
I have referred more students to our counseling services since COVID than I have in the last 15 years of my career before that. And I've been very appreciative of their willingness to receive those referrals and the expediency with which they respond to them. And that alarms me. One, I'm grateful that a student feels comfortable to talk to me about their personal problems and then feels trustworthy enough in me or has enough trust in me to take my referral to a qualified professional. What scares me is that how many more are there out there that say nothing?
I'm sorry, Julie, go ahead, please.
No, sir, I'm just agreeing with her.
Okay. I really think that this evolution over time, where if you go back 25 or 30 years, even in what were then junior colleges, it was very common to have a counseling center, to maybe have a nurse on staff, you have some mental health clinic services. Over time, most community colleges went completely away from that, and there was a whole combination of reasons, costly, liability issues, all sorts of things. We've come full circle. And the conversation, even this past week when I was with a trustee and we were in Washington, D.C. for National Legislative Summit, the conversation about the need for wraparound services, a social worker, because many of our students need help knowing how to connect to the resources that are in the community. They're working many times full-time. They're trying to take classes. They have a family. How do they have time to go figure out where they can get some low-cost mental health services? So I think that whole evolution is going to be part of our future in two-year colleges, and that's wraparound services. Amarillo College with Dr. Lowry Hart, I can't remember if it's 2 or 3, but they have full-time social workers, and their whole job is to make sure students can connect to the resources out there. Two issues that seem to be prominent, and you've all probably heard of, housing insecurity and food insecurity. How in the world can we expect a student to do well academically if they're living out of their car or they're couch surfing at a neighbor? And yet students find a way to have the resilience to do that. If we could figure out how to teach that and build that into part of what we do, it would be great. We've all heard those terms, academically underprepared. That's just one type of underpreparedness. Our students come to us at our first generation, their knowledge underprepared about how you navigate college if they've never had a family member go to college. They are also many times affectively underprepared in dealing with the stress of college. I read one time in dealing with Kohut psychology of the self that the psychology of higher education is probably the most stressful impact on one's ego strength you can find, because every assignment feels like you're judging me as a person. And in a sense, we are doing that. Going through job interviews is stressful. It's the same thing, I think, for our students. And if you're a faculty member that cares deeply, it's almost kind of, it goes both ways. You really feel like you failed your students if they're not successful. And so we've got to support one another and celebrate the successes. The other thing I wanted to go forward with Dr. Sood, and I've got the link here, and we'll put the whole PowerPoint available to everyone. It says stress is not a creation of our own violation. It's part of how the brain operates. It's designed as an instrument for survival and safety, not peace and happiness. I had not heard or read that put quite that way before. For some of our biologists, I'm curious, do you think the brain is more designed as an instrument for survival and safety, not necessarily peace and happiness? I know we have some biology instructors listening in.
I do. I agree with that. That's Erin. It's Erin in the biology department. I think that the brain has, it has certain areas of it that are processing emotion and feeling and memory and all of those things. But I think that the body is to take care of itself and to, for safety, yes, and survival.
I love the concept of, in your brain stem, you have those places that basically keep you alive with breathing. And for example, alcohol toxicity, in a sense, just wipes out your ability to sense that you need to get rid of the poison in your system. And pretty soon you go past that and it tells you to quit breathing because the parts of the brain are kind of put in non-functioning. But Manuela says, I'm not sure I quite agree with this statement. And Dr. Sheffman says, I think our best, I'm going to paraphrase you, Pam. I feel it functions best in peace and happiness. But maybe that's not what it's designed to do, but it's a result. And I'm kind of paraphrasing that. I'd like for y'all to talk a little bit more about that. Pam, why don't you start off?
Just in terms of how we process information and we do our best work, I think we do in general best whenever things are, we feel, where we need them to be. Going back to the resiliency, when you are in stress or survival mode, you probably are at a peak performance for that moment, but it's not sustainable. And so in terms of long-term functioning, you need kind of that cyclical changes between both.
Yeah, going back to those early comments about we're under chronic stress, so we don't get that opportunity to refill up emotionally. How do we help people improve their psychological resilience? I'll share kind of two words that have lived with me my whole life that were pounded into me by my older brother anytime things got tough when we were playing sports or anything else. And the two words were very simple: gut up. Just gut up. And what he was saying there is you can handle it, you can get through it. And it took that encouragement a lot. And so that's one of the reasons why I think it's critical for us to mention to each other and encourage each other and recognize each other. Julie, doesn't the body react to any perceived stress, the life-threatening? Stress, fight, flight, freeze? Absolutely. There's the whole trauma-informed care theory that deals with stress disorders, and there's another F response to stress, and it's fawn. And that's that behavior where I'm going to do anything and everything I can to approve those folks' opinion of me around me, whether I really am doing it in a healthy way or not. And that's a new flight or fight, freeze, and then fawn. Had anyone else heard of that terminology? Manuela?
Well, I have heard that terminology. That is extreme stress, and in that kind of stress, we do not really perform well. So a slight stress, yes, that is always good. We like that. That is our drive. But I agree with Pam. We need to have some kind of sense of peace and happiness so that we can function. And I actually kind of disagree with Dr. Ahmed Stood because I think there's people that don't have that serotonin in their brain. They go and look for it in drugs.
Yeah.
And so that is an issue. So I don't really agree that that's really the place where the brain is only meant to be in stress. No, I think we were meant to be at peace. And I think there are tools out there to help us cope. So when we are in extreme stress, and I feel right now I'm in extreme stress, and I do feel the pressure of the students dropping. I thought I was going to lose my job.
Yeah.
So I am not happy right now. And I think the things I have to think about is try to look at the bigger picture. My problems are not nearly as bad as those from the other students. So I'm going to stop talking because I'm breaking down now.
That's absolutely fine. I think that I'm pleased that we heard that, and definitely in my mind, it tells me again as president how critical it is to remember we have people, not employees. And we definitely need to find ways to reach out and support them and encourage them to talk about things other than work, to take time to enjoy something at work. One of the things that attracted me to higher ed eventually was just the joy of being around other academic colleagues and discussing theoretical issues in the field of psychology, or talking about the idea of maybe creating new knowledge someday, or really helping a student change their life completely. That's what kept me going. But we've got to find a way to improve not just our individual psychological resilience, but our entire institution's collective resilience. It is amazing what our community colleges have been able to do going through this challenge. And so we need to celebrate that. One of the things that they mentioned is just flat out how you think about the future. This was an interesting comment. If you think this phrase, I'm having a good time on this planet on a regular basis, or some iteration of that, that a positive outlook tells your genes to switch from inflammatory to anti-inflammatory, and that boosts your antiviral immunity. Anybody got a response to that statement? I found it fascinating from the master's degrees in biopsychology, so I found it really fascinating. Timothy?
I actually try and use that technique quite often in terms of testing anxiety, that the response that students are going through, thinking about it instead of I'm anxious, but I'm excited. It's the same response like if you're going on a roller coaster. And of course, there are students who also don't like roller coasters. And so then I go to a different scenario. But it's thinking about what is it that you're interpreting of this biochemical response, this physiological response that you're going through. And what has also helped kind of in terms of a personal narrative is sharing how it helped me to overcome performance anxiety in terms of I'm a musical performer. And when I was young and doing piano recitals, I was a nervous wreck. And when it came time to actually play, I had severe anxiety issues. And then this was something that someone shared with me at one point in time. And now when I'm ready to perform, I still feel those same things. I'm still feeling, but now I'm able, over time, I've been able to channel that into, all right, I'm excited to show what I can do on this instrument. And so that has been a strategy that I've used with my students to pretty good success.
Thank you. That's excellent. Erin?
Yes, I would agree with Timothy on what he said. I think that For me, we do this at my house a lot. When my kids are going through something, I tell them let's change our mindset on that. So let's, instead of having this attitude about it, let's try to have this attitude about it. And let's just see if that works. And so we talk a lot at my house about, changing your mindset sometimes can make things a little bit nicer for the day, when you think you're having a bad day or when you have an exam that you don't want to take. And so I do think that does help.
I think it's fascinating how it fits together and the connectedness. I worked in a few different inpatient adolescent psychiatric units during my career, and I remember one in particular where it was very, very stressful, full census. Our clients and our patients were having difficulty, and it was impacting the nursing staff and a lot of grumbling and griping. And I'm not sure who came up with it, but one of the directions we were given was there was a logbook at the nurse's station, and every individual, every 8-hour shift was supposed to write down a compliment to 3 coworkers and what you appreciate about those coworkers. And then everyone was encouraged to read all those positive comments. And in about 3 days, it did have a very positive shift in the entire attitude of what was going on. And here's some things that I do think comes very interesting from Dr. Seuss's work. He talks about, if you want to reconnect and deepen our relationships, the practice of kind attention. And it starts with assuming everybody is struggling in some form or another. That can produce a sense of empathy. It creates a stronger connection and bond with another person. Assume that everybody is struggling in some form or another, and I think that is more true to me today than ever before. We do not know what our colleagues, our friends, or our students carry around with them when they come to campus. And we have to say, I'm going to do my best to understand that and take that into account. I know that the idea of kind attention just seems to really be coming back to me. And then I connect this with some recent reading I was doing about Daniel Goleman's work on emotional intelligence and a 4-year longitudinal collection of data on college students prior to COVID. And empathy is a key part of emotional intelligence. And it's one of the factors that in the last 4 years prior to COVID, college students displayed less and less and less ability to experience empathy. So that can be taught. The next one is gratitude and kindness too. And it promotes connectedness when speaking with others, regardless of a distance. And I've been trying to remember to do this. Anytime I walk around campus and I see someone, I want to ask myself, why am I grateful to the person I'm going to meet? At Odessa College, one of the things that they literally expect every individual employee to do is greet one another in a positive way and not just walk by and not say anything. And they've just kind of set that as a cultural expectation, not a mandate. And I think that would really make a difference. And then the last one, a common purpose transcends distances. And so our common purpose in our classrooms is what? To try to get as many students successfully to complete the class as ever before. Lori, you're right. We cannot reach 100%. And one thing that I do know from working in the counseling field and the clinical world, you have to celebrate your successes. And there are successes you won't know about for 10 or 15 years. And sometimes those students come back, or sometimes those clients come back. So do not hesitate to celebrate your successes. One of the things that's very, very critical for me is to affirm what you guys do. And there's an old film called Educating Rita. I want to show you a little brief clip from it. To set the context, this is a non-traditional student at the Open University in England. And she comes from a blue-collar family and a background and has had nothing but You don't need to be going to college of any kind. So see if this doesn't ring a little bit of a bell.
Decided I wasn't coming here again. I went to the pub. They were all singing, all of them. Denny, looking happy, just got a few days holiday from work. Me mother, not really on top form, something was worrying her. Probably me dad. They were never really love's young dream. Oh, Sandra, in love, her fiancé, about the same, and her mates, all of them singing, oh, some song they'd learned from the jukebox. And I thought, just what the frig am I trying to do? Why don't I just pack it in, stay here, and join in with the singing?
And why didn't you?
You think I can, don't you? You think because you pass a pub doorway and hear them all singing, you think we're all okay? That we're all surviving with the spirit intact? I did join in the singing, but when I turned around, my mother had stopped singing, and she was crying. I said, "Why are you crying, Mother?" And she said, "There must be better songs to sing than this." And I thought, yeah, that's what I'm trying to do, isn't it? Sing a better song. Well, that's why I've come back, and that's why I'm staying.
That's what we're all trying to do. It's help our students sing a better song, right? And I am just in awe and humbled by the work that every one of you guys do for our students and for our colleagues. And there are times it's easy to get down and discouraged when things just don't seem to be going right. Things don't come together in the classroom. You'll have a class where it's just everything is easy. The students are engaged and it's a joy. And then you'll have a class section where nothing seems to work and you're doing things exactly the way you've always thought to do them. That's when it's time to do this, you know. And I want to just spend the next 2 or 3 minutes, if you're comfortable, to share a story. So think back on your college experiences as either student, faculty member, or professional. Think of a names, and you don't have to say the names, but in your mind, think of names of people to whom you have had a positive influence. You've significantly impacted the course of their life, students or colleagues. Pick one name and take a minute and just remember the richness of the purpose of your calling. And I think we've got time for 1 or 2. I know that we've got to be done in 7 minutes, but can someone, and you're not bragging on yourself, you're just showing why you are blessed to be able to be in this business. So can someone, all right, I see a hand up. I can't see a name real quick. Saul, please go ahead, Saul.
Well, I just wanted to share how I had students in the dual enrollment who were actually ESL students, and how my Spanish class actually helped those students learn English, because what I did is I paired them with the kids who did not speak Spanish and they didn't speak English. So we use both languages, and that successfully helped the ESL students as well as my non-Hispanic students to learn the language. But again, that was a long time ago. And now these kids are grown men. And to my surprise, one day I got a wedding invitation, and it was one of those kids who's now a grown man invited me to his wedding. And it's amazing how it was 13 years ago when I had this student who's now a grown adult and still remembers all those little things that we did and how they made a difference in his adult and professional life. He's now a chef. Okay. And I just wanted to share that with you because time flies. You meet so many different students, but sometimes the little things that you do become a huge difference maker in a student's lives. And this is just the story I wanted to share with you.
Wonderful. Do we have one more? I encourage you to take time to think of those folks whenever you think, boy, I'm not accomplishing anything. Closing with this, a great article. I've got it down there by Jessica Peresta, How Your Life is Like a Song. And she says, as we go through life, we are creating our own song, including an intro, verses, chorus, and coda. Intros when you're born. Verses, each passing year is different. But your chorus is your life's theme. And the coda, every good song has a great ending. So I'd like to leave you with 3 questions. What kind of song are you writing? What's your personality like? It leads to the chorus. And have you added more and more verses over the years? I want to thank everyone very much for taking time to allow me to share some thoughts with you.